Yeah, baby! Hi there! Welcome to Beer Christianity, the Beer Christianity podcast. My name is Jonty.
I'm Laura.
And Drabs is not with us. We actually can't find him. So this is part 2 of going environmental. You heard part 1 where we spoke to Picket Chapwedzeka, the heavily armed rhino protector, and you heard us talking a little bit about hunting and vegetarianism and all that sort of stuff. This is part 2. We still have more stuff with Picket. We're also going to be hearing from Greta Thunberg, and her amazing How Dare You speech. If you haven't heard it, you've probably heard some gammon edgelord boomer bitching about it online, or people who are ideologically so conformed to the ways and the thinking of this world and the dominant economic system in it that they have been misled into thinking capitalism is not the problem and climate change doesn't exist. So yeah, we'll be hearing her speech because I can think of nothing in it that is in any way wrong. And how old is she?
She's 16 years old.
16 years old. That is mental. When I was 16, I was such a moron. Were you smart like that?
No. I wished I was smart like that.
What would you have been giving a speech on when you were 16 and they were like, the UN was like, hey, you have 5 minutes. Tell us your thoughts, tell us your feels.
Oh no. Probably some misguided interpretation of third wave feminism, which would have angered many, many people.
Justifiably?
Probably very misinformed. The sort of third wave feminism you only found on Tumblr in 2012, which is,
Nice, that is a niche-ass reference that I can't...
You'll know the pain if you live through it like I did.
If you did live through it, please email us on beerchristianity@yahoo.com. Also, small, tiny little side note, I've been giving the wrong email address, and I can't tell how long I've been giving the wrong email address. It's beerchristianity@yahoo.com, not beerchristianity@yahoo.co.uk. So sorry for that. And all of our billions of fans have not been able to email us. It's enraging.
This is what happens when you use a Yahoo email address.
It's not the Yahoo. It's the co.uk. Turns out you can't even get those anymore. That's how old school it is. I was like, it's cool. I'll just create that. You can't create it. You can only do .com. They won't even let you.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
times have changed.
Pretty special. I'm trying to think what I would do if I was 16. When I was 16, it would definitely be about how, people need to get more into alternative music, and like mainstream music is actually just really not cool. And
Did somebody say edgelord?
Edgelord. And probably also how self-harm is just another form of poetry. And yeah, you would have found me insufferable, more insufferable, less sufferable than I am now. Such a day. Whereas Greta is just a freaking hero. We'll talk a little bit about what she said and people's reactions to it, but I first I'm going to play a ropey recording of that so that you can hear it, because it is worth hearing. And then coming up after that, we've also got Picket doing a little bit more of the interview with him about rhinos and conservation and that sort of stuff, and more of Drabs, Laura and myself drinking and talking. But first, here's Greta.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight? You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe. The popular idea of cutting our emissions in half in 10 years only gives us a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees and the risk of setting off irreversible chain reactions beyond human control. 50% may be acceptable to you, but those numbers do not include tipping points, most feedback loops, additional warming hidden by toxic air pollution, or the aspects of equity and climate justice. They also rely on my generation sucking hundreds of billions of tons of your CO2 out of the air with technologies that barely exist. So a 50% risk is simply not acceptable to us, we who have to live with the consequences. To have a 67% chance of staying below a 1.5 degrees of global temperature rise, the best odds given by the IPCC, the world had 420 gigatons of CO2 left to emit back on January 1st, 2018. Today, that figure is already down to less than 350 gigatons. How dare you pretend that this can be solved with just business as usual and some technical solutions? With today's emissions levels, that remaining CO2 budget will be entirely gone within less than 8.5 years. There will not be any solutions or plans presented in line with these figures here today, because these numbers are too uncomfortable, and you are still not mature enough to tell it like it is. You are failing us, but the young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say we will never forgive you. We will not let you get away with this. Right here, right now, is where we draw the line. The world is waking up, and change is coming whether you like it or not. Thank you.
And now, pass.
Oh, hey.
So you imagine, so I'm recording this, and Laura and I have actually listened to the Greta Thunberg How Dare You speech already that you just heard. But obviously we're recording this and we're just going to splice it up and put it with it. So I just kind of turned it to her thinking that she would have mind read and known that what I meant is for her to go, wow, that's powerful stuff. Just, that's good stuff. And you just look kind of terrified.
Yeah, I mean, I was just microphone thrust into face with no warning or explanation of what I'm supposed to say next. But yeah, wow, powerful stuff.
Powerful stuff. What did you think of it, though?
I thought it was incredible. Like you said earlier, like there was nothing in it that was incorrect, and so emotional as well. Like you could see how emotional, and you can hear how emotional she's getting in that, and she is absolutely correct to be. Like I really hope that 16-year-olds today are being inspired by Greta, like how I was inspired by Malala Yousafzai when all of that kicked off, because like Malala Yousafzai is legit one of my heroes, and seeing powerful young women in this world doing good stuff is really cool to see, regardless of the terrifying climate emergency that's also going on at the same time. Like, for all that aside, she's still doing good stuff.
Yeah, it's super cool. And for me, like, the fact that she's a powerful young woman is kind of irrelevant, I think, probably. I mean, it's really cool as well. But it's just, like, whoever stood up and said that, I would have been super, super impressed by what they were saying. Like, just the content of it, the idea of fairy tales of unlimited economic growth on a planet with limited resources, which is, I think, part of the problem with the kind of environmental degradation we're seeing is our economic model says you can produce more and more stuff and more wealth, as if we don't live on a finite planet where there's finite space to put our pollution, where there's finite space to put our carbon, and finite resources from which to make the stuff. It's just kind of insane when you think of it that way. Kind of as insane as Christians defending to the hilt an economic system that is predicated on greed. Hey, if everyone just acts selfishly, everything will turn out all right. That seems reasonable, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And I think it's so important to note how angry she is and how right she is to be angry. And I think we're not appreciating enough how much we've gone wrong when literal children are the ones who have to say to us, you're doing it wrong, because like they are not the ones who should have to do it. They are not the ones who should have the responsibility to fix this. Like older adults.
Rude.
Yeah. And her saying, you have taken my childhood away. We absolutely have. I mean, I say we. I will count myself into that young generation. Thank you very much. But she's absolutely right. Her childhood has been taken away. She should not have to be the one standing in front of the United Nations telling people to get their act together. We should not be getting our act together because a 16-year-old girl has told us to. We should have been getting our act together 30 years ago when scientists were first telling us to get our act together. And she is so right. And Greta.
Absolutely. She is a freaking hero. Her anger, though, is really nothing compared to the anger of people on the internet seeing that video posted on almost every instance that I saw on my Facebook feed. And bear in mind, I have a lot of communists, a lot of anarchists, and a lot of very progressive Christians on my feed. And yet, friends and friends of friends who have posted the video, the comment section is like just a shit show of stupidity and aggression, and there's a number of lines people are taking, like, who does she think she is? Or, I don't get a nice feeling about her. Or, how dare she? Or, and then the classic stuff of, and how did she get there? I bet she flew, which I don't think she did.
There was a whole big thing about how she got a boat to America. Come on, guys.
But also, it's the kind of people who would go, peasants complaining about feudalism, well, they can't do that. There's a great meme about that where it's like, well, you claim you don't like feudalism, and yet here you are taking the master's food from scraps from his table, and, I bet you're going to use a feudalist pitchfork to attack the master. Just remember the slightly aggressive quote from, I think it's Marx. And again, this as a Christian and as a pacifist, I'm going to say that I don't have full sympathy with it, but I think you get the vibe that I feel when people say that sort of stuff, which is the last capitalist will be hanged with a rope he sold us, which is, there's some aggressive energy in that. But the idea that, because you live in a society, we live in a society, you live in a society where, we use smartphones, or, this idea that you can't criticize our economic system or our culture or where we're going wrong if you participated in it in any way is so stupid. It's so dumb. I can't tell you how stupid you look. This is what you look like when you say that kind of stuff. That's the kind of Jordan Peterson level. Oh, that's harsh. I'm going to turn off a lot of people. It's fine if you like Jordan Peterson, but good. Come on, guys. No, it probably isn't. Hey.
I'm 22 years old. I was born in 97. I don't know who those people
are. My goodness. This whole I'm too young to know who the Beatles are thing.
Who is he?
Oh my, Jordan Peterson. He's like a kind of pseudo-intellectual that a lot of right-wingers like, because he's hostile to identity politics. Now, I'm hostile to some parts of identity politics if they say the quality of your ideas are based on, who you are or how you identify or anything like that. I've got to say that philosophically that is some weak beer. But also at the same time, if you can't recognize that identity politics is a necessary liberation movement for people who have been massively oppressed throughout, centuries, then you may not be paying attention. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, Peterson, we can get on to another time. Just those kinds of reactions and people just getting the vehemence of people at a 16-year-old girl. What do you think is behind that?
I mean, there's a whole comment to be made on just internet troll culture as a whole, which is a whole giant rabbit hole, which maybe we can avoid going down because, it's kind of difficult to avoid commenting on it from that perspective, but it is incredibly difficult to see, regardless of who's giving the opinion, to see an opinion you don't like and just immediately have to be angry about it, which is not great. It's the lack of empathy, the lack of compassion that is just kind of fueling it. And it's also, I think it's very defensive of a thing of we don't have to listen to her, she's only a 16-year-old, we can just kind of carry on doing what we want, which is absolutely ludicrous when she's literally showing in your face that we need to sort ourselves out. It's kind of an excuse to not care, which is not a great attitude to be having in the current world.
And also for Christians who have, the verse in Timothy about, don't let people disrespect you just because you're young. And I was reminded today of King David, and how freaking young he was when he was, called and anointed and, used by God in a really... We tend to think of the older, later album David, but actually it's those tricky first 2 or 3 albums that were really, where he really, you can see God's heart for people. I was talking to somebody today who was saying Gideon would have been incredibly young as well. Most of the disciples would have been... I didn't know this. So tell the good people this, because maybe everyone knows this except me, in which case let's all have a good laugh at Jonty.
I mean, I can't remember the exact fact, which is, is standard. But there's something somewhere where they're paying temple tax or something like that, and they're paying some kind of tax, and there's only 2 of them who are actually old enough to pay it, and you have to be in your mid-20s or something like that. They're all in their early 20s, I think, at the oldest, and kind of late teens at the youngest, and Jesus was only 33 when he died. They're not elderly people. They're young people. It's not
If anybody actually knows those stats and has a better biblical knowledge than we do, this is not playing well. I mean,
drabs.
Exactly. And also, conservatives are going to go well, you see, they don't even care about the Bible. That's why they're progressives. I'm
only 22. I haven't had that much.
Oh, stop with the thing. You are betraying Greta. Greta. I was which one of those do we put? Greta. She's great. The Greta Thunberg and the lesser Thunberg.
We can't include that in the thing.
We're totally including it. The Greta spotted Thunberg. I think that's ridiculously important. I find it bizarre because I'll be honest, that thing of not getting angry when you see something you disagree with on the internet, that's obviously impossible to do. You do. You get angry that people have ridiculous opinions. No, I don't think that's true.
No, I would agree that it's quite difficult to not get angry at things, but getting angry at something doesn't mean you have to comment an angry, rude, offensive comment underneath it when it's going directly to a real person, especially if that real person is a 16-year-old who is telling the truth.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is everyone's just this must be garbage. I mean, you've got all these idiots posting the kind of conspiracy theory stuff. The worst one has been the memes about, she's got braids, and the Nazis used girls who look just like that in their propaganda. She's got that kind of Viking look, and it's so weird. You've got No, but you've got that vibe, and they're genuinely making the comparison between an old Third Reich poster and her, and going, you see, this is what oppressive regimes, do. And I'm you guys are so much closer to the Nazis, because it's all these right-wingers who are doing this. I find it really bizarre. And just this level of virulent, vicious, viscous.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, but you're So in, a book that I've mentioned, I think at least 4 times by this point, many times, This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein.
Oh, we know the facts from that book, but not the Bible.
It's the only book that I've read about climate change, and it's excellent. Anyway, there's a whole section in it where she goes to a climate change deniers conference, and it's full of just kind of, hacks and crazy people. But their kind of big thing, a lot of them who do believe in climate change are anti kind of fixing the problem, because they see it's fixing the problem as too much government involvement in their lives, and it's kind of, it's oppression, it's, fascism, whatever. But actually, the more you think about it, the worse it gets, the more government intervention we're going to have to deal with, and it's, if that's your standpoint, it's stupid.
Well, I've never really understood. I can understand people being a little bit terrified of the government and people having a lot of power. I think those same people, when you tell them to take power away from the police or the military, would get terribly upset, like the snowflakes they are. And I think that's the key, is if you don't want the government to be strong enough to help people, but you do want it to be strong enough to hurt people, you're almost certainly on the wrong side, I think. And as a Christian, I think that's a weird thing. If you think that our taxes, we should be taxed in order to pay for military interventions, but we shouldn't be taxed in order to heal and to restore, I think you're on odd ground, really.
Yeah. And I think if your way of life or your opinions about government and such, maybe keeping your personal way of life safe, but it's harming somebody else's life, that I think is not the right side of things. I think you need to be thinking about the way you're living, the way you're advocating for people to live, whether that is entirely self-serving or whether that is helping other people across the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a weird squeamishness of, if it was churches doing it, hey, we're all for it. But the moment it becomes taxation, and I just find it bizarre, like as Christians, Jesus literally says, render unto Caesar. He gets that taxes are there, that this is not the most important thing. But because, everything that doesn't have Caesar's image on it, i.e. us, i.e. his living and beautiful creation, belongs to God and the government can't own. But you know what? Money, the government can be used to do it. Again, the same people who will say, well, you can't, have civil disobedience because the rulers are placed there by God. So you trust them enough to be the rulers and to, do whatever the hell they want so that you shouldn't protest against them, but you don't trust them enough to administer money. And I get we're supposed to have accountability for that money, but at the same time, we're able to create incredibly complicated systems for administering everything else. Why would we not be able to do that with proper accountability, so that we could use money to help people when they're sick, when they lose their jobs, when they're in dire straits in some way? This kind of anti-socialist fear-mongering, which I saw on Memes for Jesus, which I like. It's kind of a little bit anodyne and vanilla and a bit lame as a meme page, but they're actually quite fun a lot of the time. They're not as biting as Catholic memes, who are also a little bit right-wing, but who I like very much.
Look out for the bonus episode of Beer Christianity, where Jonty just reviews Christian meme pages.
Oh man, that's a great idea. We're totally going to do that.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I love going to those pages and seeing the memes. I hate reading the comments, particularly when they get political, because there was one yesterday on Instagram which was just ridiculously anti-socialist and for no good reason. And the comments were just these really angry, really convinced, really people who would never fall into idolatry in any other way, genuinely convinced that Adam Smith was God's representative on earth. The wealth of nations is just another testament, and capitalism is God's way, which I find odd. So odd.
Yeah, I think as well, because if people, I think especially among, this is going to get me in trouble if people are easily offended, but I think especially among a lot of American people, you say the word socialist and they're immediately up in arms and things like that. And actually, if you take away the big scary political words of it and just say, hey, I want to give people enough money to be able to get good health care, I think it becomes a lot less scary, and I think people need to maybe just not think about it in terms of like, oh well, you know, you need to not be involved with them because they're this word or they're this word or another. Like, if you see someone doing something nice, like, they're probably okay. It's probably okay to do that thing as well.
Yeah,
Like,
imagine this. So think about socialized healthcare. What if all the Christians got together and we all tithed, say, a third of our tithe towards just making sure that the people who were poor in our communities, in our church communities and beyond, were taken care of, which, by the way, is the Old Testament Levitical way tithe is supposed to be done. So let's do that. Let's put it on to thing. Now, in a nation like America, well, that's a lot of Christians, really. That's going to take some good administration, a spiritual gift of administration, and also a lot of people who will dedicate their lives as servants to doing this. But now, what if there's some discussion about how we do this, and also, you know, like disagreements and making sure we need to have some accountability, great word, and I remembered it first time, yeah. So we probably need to have that, and maybe nationwide, and it's affecting a whole bunch of people, so maybe we need to include people from outside the church as well. Hey, what if we democratically voted for who can... Oh, wait a minute, that's the government doing it. I don't understand why it's so terrifying to you. If the government is bad, you guys already have guns to take them down. That's literally why you have the guns, by the way, which I also find hilarious, because it's always like, NRA, you know, we need to keep the guns. This isn't just hating on America, because have you seen what Boris Johnson is doing in the UK? And also, look at South Africa's, you know, recent political history. We're not being down on you, but the NRA thing of like, we have the right to bear arms, and it's literally to take down an unjust government. And yet, I just want to know if mosques started exercising that right and like really arming themselves up, how their communities would feel about that.
Also, can we talk about how the people who wrote whatever it is, I'm allowed to have arms, whatever, in like the 1700s, and who were like keeping slaves.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we shouldn't be listening to people who like kept people as slaves. Is that hot take?
That's a hot take.
Let's not listen to slave owners.
Okay, I gotta say that they had some good ideas, and
not like across the board.
This is what identity politics gets you. Is
slavery is bad.
Slavery is bad. That is a hot take.
Hot take. Old people, as in like people in the 1700s, maybe they don't have the knowledge that necessarily applies to life in 2019.
Yeah, an AR-15, for instance. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Speaking of AR-15s and guns, here's Picket and more of the last part of my interview with him, and also the last part of our conversations last week. In terms of like poaching, I think a lot of people have this vision of like people who don't have anything to eat coming into a nature reserve that is reserved for wealthy tourists, and coming and killing animals just to eat and stuff like that, which obviously then they would have some sympathy with the poachers, little wire traps or that kind of stuff. Is that what it's like, or is that a kind of, is it different from that?
Okay, a very good question there, and I really should have explained that clearly in the beginning. So we have got two types of poaching here. We've got the subsistence type of poaching, which involves the community around protected areas that moves in the reserve with the very primitive way of hunting, using wire snares, digging pits, and using dogs, bows, and arrows like that, to a very complicated and sophisticated, well-organized commercial poaching that involves big game rifles, using drugs now, darting animals, and things like that. So this is completely separate. A poor man is coming in dogs and things like that. But then you get very wealthy people with very big corporations that are supporting poaching by sending these equipments to a poor man to use. And those poor people are now coming in poaching rhinos, poaching elephants, using big game calibers, rifles, and then to supply these products to these international markets. And normally those people, when you meet them in the reserve in the bush, they also have got advanced weapons and they are well trained as well. So they give you a different challenge and they fight you big time compared to a subsistence poacher.
It sounds like you must have seen some really hectic stuff. I want people to get a picture of it. Like, is it like, do you actually end up seeing gunfights? Does it get to that sort of thing? Is it mostly tracking people and trying to arrest them? Like, what's the level of resistance from those kind of commercial poachers?
Commercial poachers are very tough to work with. Guys are well trained. They've got good equipment, so they can come with GPSs and they can navigate in the bush. They've got satellite radios which they can get that are all sponsored. They've got good quality firearms, very good quality telescopes as well, which they can use, night vision that they can use. So they can operate in very difficult conditions. And a lot of them are ex-military people that are funded to do these things. So when you meet as a ranger, you meet these people, you are the only line, you are this line, the last line of defense to protecting these animals. So these guys normally, they always engage with you, always try to exchange fire. If they see you before you see them, they sometimes hide, but they're very quick to fight back. So in as much as you would like to do a very good arrest, which is ideal, so we can continue with arrest and then get to the bottom of it and to get to the sense that people are funding everything, it's not always like that, because you face so much resistance that at the end of the day is protecting your life, protecting the life of your fellow rangers out there. So yes, poaching, close contact and firing activity happens, and a lot of poachers really lose their lives. We do also lose a lot of rangers. So every 31st of July we celebrate World Rangers Day, and in that day we commemorate all rangers that have been killed in that year. And in this year, in 2019, we actually lost quite a lot of rangers to gunfire from poachers, and we also doing well in getting these poachers down, but we really feel that we're losing some men out there who are really coming up with a very good role, trusted by the states wherever they're working for, to look after wildlife, but they end up being shot by poachers. People are coming in illegally to harvest wildlife products and plants for the markets and for money. So it is very, very dangerous. We do lose men, and on that World Rangers Day we commemorate those lives that we lose. It is a very sad thing that we're losing men out there, really good men who are there to protect wildlife.
It's like, I've never actually thought of the fight for conservation as being an actual fight, like it's like a war.
Definitely it is. If you look few years back, ranger trainings used to be a quick one. You do 2 weeks, 3 weeks training and you deployed in the field, and it was just easy arrest and you just patrol a fence line or somewhere, patrol a river system. But in the last decade, because of the highest level of poaching and how sophisticated and complicated it became, we have also then upped the game in terms of ranger training. I'm involved with training rangers as well, and we have really tried a lot of new techniques and new ways of improving ranger training. So when they're deployed, they are well trained, well equipped, well armed, to make sure that they can face the challenge that is continuously changing. Poachers are continuously coming up with new ways of poaching, so as rangers we need to adapt to that and make sure that we are always ahead of them. Otherwise we continue to lose species if we stay lagging behind their new strategies.
So a lot of the people I know back in South Africa particularly, but also here, have a real kind of affection for rhinos, and they love rhinos, and what I found really interesting about what you guys do is that you're not just protecting the rhinos, but it's everything around the rhinos as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and also about the kind of relationship you end up developing with the animals themselves?
Yeah, because we've got quite a lot of species that are under threat, but we have flagship species of animals that really are facing an imminent danger. So we've got rhinos, we've got elephants that are really right on the forefront. The giraffes now coming up, pangolins coming up, wild dogs and stuff. And when we protect, we are not a species centered. We protect the whole area. So any help we get goes to the protection of these animals. So if you're protecting a species, let's say a rhino, it also goes down to every animal which is around there, because if you're making fences and stuff, you're going to protect everything in there. If you're making roads, supplying food, supplying water to different areas, a lot of animals that are in that same ecosystem will benefit from that. So yes, we do a multi-dimensional support, and also by spending time in the field a lot, because we're walking on foot, we get to meet these animals, and just like humans, these animals have got a different character and a different interest as well. And as I said, they also tend to see and feel that we are good guys. So they really love hanging around us because we spend time in their environment. We sleep there in our tents, we walk there daily. So they tend to know us, tend to understand us, tend to pick our scent and get to understand our scent, get to understand our uniform. So you don't see animals running all the time. So it also affords us an opportunity to get a bit closer and study the animal behavior, understand exactly what these guys are eating, understand their breeding system, their communication system and all that, which is really fantastic and is what keeps us also going, because we are just out there. So being part of that big family of wildlife is amazing, and really it's very satisfying for us, and we boots on the ground, and we happy to spend days and hours out there looking after these animals, because we become one family, one big family. Yeah.
That's so cool. I guess a final question for most of the people listening to this are going to be Christians. What would you say to kind of UK Christians in an era where, the Amazon rainforest seems to be intentionally being set fire to make way for kind of big business and development and that sort of stuff, in an era where we've got all of these species coming close to extinction and destruction of biodiversity, like what message would you have for the church and what it could do?
I must say, I would like to say that the church and environment, we are one. All these animals, they are on this planet with us as humans, but as humans, we were amazingly created by God. The way we look, the way we walk, everything amazes even the animals. That is why, like for example, myself, I walk on foot with an elephant which is 6 tons and stands 5 meters high, but the animal, when it looks at me, is very scared and moves away. It's because of how we were created, and I really feel that by looking after them, we are doing a very good role. Looking after them and not killing them and not supporting their disappearance, we are really doing a very good thing to God, and we're doing our role as the people who should really look after and live in harmony with these wild animals. So I really feel that the church is very closer to wildlife, and let's continue in our prayers, in everything that we do. It is not even my energy or my knowledge or my ranger's knowledge, it is God. It's God's love and God's will that is really keeping us all going. It's really protecting these animals. As humans, we can only do our best, but without God's love and God's direction and guidance, we will not succeed. So I really feel that in everyone out there, everyone around the world, let's continue in our prayers. Let's pray for these rhinos. Let's pray for every species which is on this planet, that all this chaos and all this problem that we're facing today comes to an end, and animals will really live in peace, and we all live in harmony. And really I feel that the wilderness is really open for us all. Let's try to spend time. Let's visit these protected areas. Let's go out in wilderness areas and have peace, and let's spend time there. And really that peace, that tranquility that we found in the bush, it's very good for our minds and for our souls as well. So I really encourage every Christian out there that wildlife is for us. Let's continue doing our stuff, and we are very privileged to still having those animals today. Let's do our best.
Picket, my main man, who is super cool, and we're going to be putting something on beerchristianity.libsyn.com and in the description of this so that you can find a place where you can support rangers like him if you want to. Also, a quick important thing. Do you know how you can tell that someone's a vegan? That they'll tell you. Don't you worry.
Oh, it's so original.
They will though. Have you seen that cartoon where like the ice cream truck comes up, then nobody comes to it, and then it pulls off, and then this person just runs behind and it stops, and the guy's like, "Would you like an ice cream?" No, I'm a vegan. No, I know some very, very lovely vegans who are not douchebags about it, but also, there's a few who, there's always, just like there are some meat eaters who are not great. What I also wanted to say about hunting was, one, I think when people see Donald Trump's son and the other billionaire brain donors making out next to the carcasses of giant, beautiful animals, or looking like they're really, really freaking manly and barbaric and, close to their, animal roots because they have night vision goggles and telescopic sights and high-powered rifles, and they've brought down this thing, which is super not impressive, dude. I think we need to separate that out because obviously those people are douchebags, but they're not douchebags because they're, hunters. They're douchebags because they're billionaires. And nobody needs that much money in a world where people are starving. That is, I believe, an affront to God. You need to be doing something better with your life if you're accumulating that much wealth. There is, if you were in any other situation where somebody was that greedy and selfish, you would hate that person. And yet we look up to them as role models in some way. And I think it is Antichrist, actually.
I saw a tweet the other day that was about countries gunning together to donate $20 million to the Amazon rainforest, and somebody had replied to it saying, just so you know, the film Boss Baby cost $200 million.
That's right.
Which I think is just yeah.
And actually, you don't want to get into that thing where people are like, oh, well, how can you care about this and not that other thing that also deserves caring about? But when Notre Dame caught fire and everybody was making the donations, and I was just like, that's nice, but people were posting like tearful, like Instagram posts about how, I can't believe you're gone, and I was like, it's architecture, guys, but it's like,
wasn't the bit that burned down like rebuilt? Like it's not even the original. Don't quote me on this. I might be wrong. I swear it's like not even the original part of the cathedral that burned down.
I have no idea. I do know that billionaires pledged way more for that than they did for the Amazon.
A lot more.
Yeah. Which is odd. And as Christians, I have to say, I don't care that much. And I know I'm a Protestant, so, of course I don't care. Burn them all down! No, that's a joke, obviously. I don't really mean that. But, like also, our buildings are not as important as the lungs of the planet, or indeed the people who live in them. I think that's a more important thing. We have not talked enough about theology. I want to know, Drabs, what you think about what God thinks about what we should think.
Excellent.
About this.
All of the things.
Certainly for me personally, one of the turning points was reading N.T. Wright's Surprised by Hope and the particular emphasis on eschatology. And I think that's a general shift that a lot of...
If you don't know what eschatology means, don't worry, it's not the end of the world. Wait, it is. It is.
Okay, so the shift in general Christian thinking away from Earth is a place that we're going to escape to get to heaven, to this idea of an Earth that is going to be reconciled. In fact, in Colossians 1, when Christ talks about reconciling all things, and that actually looking at Revelation 21 and heaven and earth coming together and earth being restored and renewed, and that being part of the reconciliation process. And then there's this kind of like, oh, well, hang on moment, which says that when we work for the environment in this world, we're actually building heaven. We're actually ushering in the kingdom of God. And that has been a shift generally, I think.
You say generally. Have you been on, for instance, just any Christian magazine's Facebook page any time recently? Because because that has not been generally accepted in any way, shape, or form.
Come on,
among smart people, for reals, but amongst admittedly, Facebook's pretty right wing, but yeah.
Maybe the interesting thing is, I don't think it actually gets you out of the pickle really, because if by saying all things become reconciled and renewed at the end, as opposed to a kind of escapist theology or whatever, where we just flee it, well, actually, that doesn't solve the problem, because if all the algae is going to be restored and renewed, like, I still don't have an incentive to give a shit about it any more than if I were to escape.
I have found this because I love that there are serious and conservative, because if they're liberal theologians, who cares what they think? But like, if they're conservative theologians, no, but legit, because I'll say anything. Like, but if they're conservative theologians who are saying, okay, but, this is going to be a renewed earth. This is the place we're going to be living. It's not going to be burned up, so you don't just get to not care about it. I found that really encouraging and at the same time super unconvincing, and I was really hoping nobody was going to say it, but now you've said it. Like, it's going to be renewed. That, like, it's not like, oh, well, I'm afraid we don't get heaven on earth anymore because, you guys have burnt it. That's not the God we serve. So we can't have a theology that is self-serving in that sense. But that's kind of not supposed to be surprising for a Christian anyway. Like, if you're going to go, well, we need to save the planet because it is worth saving, and it is otherwise we're going to be without it. Well, that's one thing. But if you're like, we need to save the planet because it's worth saving, and even if we don't, it'll be renewed. I don't know. There's something much better about that. Don't you think, as a Christian?
Maybe, but the whole of Christianity, for me, makes far more sense when I don't even think about end times. Mm-hmm. Even my evangelism makes more sense when I'm like, we'll know in this life right now, it's going to be better for you to enter into a relationship with Christ, irrespective of what happens with your eternity. Yeah. Like, I can't not share Christ with you. My principal motivation is not to save you from some possible or even certain ECT or whatever else. It's actually, like, right now I believe that the life of Christ and every day that you live without Christ. And so in the same way... I
just realized ECT is eternal conscious torment. I can't believe you use that phrase so much that you have a freaking acronym for it. How often do you have to say it that you need to shorten it? Why are you talking about this so much? Wow! ECT! Oh my goodness. Sorry, I mean, you were making a serious point, but also, what? Also, interestingly, we've got a Halloween podcast that's going to be talking very much about eternal conscious torment and about whether God is the kind of God who would do that sort of thing. And you should, listen to that as well. Sorry, I mean to just jump in. Don't look at me like that, Laura. Sometimes you need to promo. What were you saying?
I can't remember, but one more thought on this.
Yes, because you're doing that thing. No, don't hold on to that thought. But you're doing the thing even if it won't make that much of a difference, because it's the right thing to do, which is exactly the same as Stephen Rand, who was part of the Jubilee 2000 debt campaign, said to me. He was like, when we campaigned about apartheid, we didn't think apartheid was going to fall, but we campaigned anyway because it was the right thing to do. Now that we're campaigning about trade justice, we don't think that necessarily it's going to happen, but we do it because it's the right thing to do. Sometimes you do things because they're the right thing to do. It's anti-pragmatic, but it is hopeful.
Yes, I affirm that. And also, I just want to drop in, a guy came and spoke in my church a couple of years back. His name was Peter Harris. I think he heads up a pretty cool conservation charity called Arosha.
Christian conservation charity as well.
Christian conservation charity at that. And you should definitely check out some of his work. The title of his sermon was Saving Souls or Saving Seals. Oh, we're going to talk about fracking a bit.
Oh my goodness, we're going to talk about fracking. So here's the thing, guys. This is awkward, but one of the people here, and this is a good way in to hating him, and also to some larger issues about pragmatism when it comes to the environment. But Ben has something to say. Ben has something to say. Drabs, no. Ben has something to say.
No, you don't relegate me to Ben because of this.
Okay, wait. I'll call you Drabs now, and then we'll see.
Ben in
Drabs.
condescending tones.
Drabs has something to say.
Well, look, I spoke at the beginning of this podcast about my shift into environmentalism and how it's a highly pragmatic thing, and I think that carbon is ultimately the thing we need to all keep our eye on. That's not to say other issues such as plastics aren't important. It's just to say that they're not threatening our existence in the same way carbon is. And to that end, we have to find solutions which are not just idealistic in the way that, the end of capitalism. I want the end of capitalism. I'd love that, to come to an end, but it's not going to happen.
Have you visited a meme page recently? Because there's a lot of fucking guillotines, and if you just watch the memes about 9/11 this year, dude, it's a different world out there. I'm just gonna say.
Yeah. Okay, so on the basis that people are still going to want to get from one continent to another, and therefore air travel is still going to happen, and we don't have a technological solution, low carbon solution for that, and all the rest of it, and that people still want to watch TV and heat their homes and whatever else. So
those selfish bastards.
Yeah, I know, right? They want to listen to podcasts. Right?
Why can't you peddle podcasts like a decent human being? Feel shame.
When we think about the problem of energy, and there are some great low carbon solutions out there, like solar and wind. Mm-hmm. Which have some huge advantages and which I promote and advocate for. And yet they are not able to sustain our energy supply as it currently stands. And so there are other solutions such as low carbon solutions such as nuclear. Nuclear has some disadvantages.
Some disadvantages.
There are a few.
Yeah.
Probably the most relevant of which is it takes freaking 40 years to actually build that kind of infrastructure. And so as a bridging strategy to switching to a renewable energy solution on the basis that we can't switch overnight to a fully solar/fully wind system, and we can't overnight launch nuclear power plants, then there is a lower carbon solution, which has proven to be somewhat effective, which is able to build on a small scale, unlike nuclear, and which has minimal localized environmental impact.
I'm sorry, I'm just chewing the wall currently.
And I don't know, so I guess my ruthless pragmatism has actually led me to a certain extent to kind of support the fracking. And I'll just let that hang there, and we'll see what other people have to say.
Let's just be quiet for a bit, just in memory of our respect for drabs. I think that's enough. Okay. What the hell, man? I thought I knew you. Boo! Boo! Fracking is terrible. Fracking does terrible things to human beings. That's why you should makes their water catch on fucking fire, man. It poisons people. It's not okay.
I've seen you set fire to your freaking Zambucas. Don't talk to me about your water being on fire.
I mean, it's fine for me, but there are people who don't drink out there, and that's the important thing. No, man.
Yeah,
No. And also, the thing is, with all of these low carbon versions, because the strongest argument I've heard is for nuclear, because it is carbon neutral once it's running, or almost carbon neutral once it's running.
Yeah, you got problems with disposal of waste.
And that's exactly the thing, is it's that thing of assuming it's the same as oil of, it'll last forever. Just places to dispose of your nuclear waste will last forever. They won't. What they'll do is they'll dump it off the coast of Somalia. That's what they'll do. Yeah. What they'll do is dump it in the developing world where we don't have to live with it, but other people do. And when those things implode, and they will implode, it will do incredible damage. So you can't use that. The fracking does the same thing. The fracking poisons the water table. It causes earthquakes. It's really not very good. The problem here is that we're not being ambitious enough, and I don't want to be that guy, but the problem is capitalism.
You
Because
heard it here first.
hot
Right
take.
in this moment.
Because net exporters, we can pipe oil, right, from oil fields literally in Asia, to where we are now. Same with gas. Okay, I live currently in Britain, where people find it economically viable to put solar panels on their houses and offices. There are farmers currently converting fields into solar farms after the Tories cut the subsidies, because they realize that this is something that is useful and valuable. In England, where the sun shines 4 days in a year. Okay, I come
Not
from
now because of climate change.
That's true. Actually, it's actually a really good investment. I come from South Africa, where you see so little solar, it's insane. Like, you know what you can count on in South Africa? The freaking sun shining. Like, and when it's not shining, it's going to rain for like 12 minutes and then it's going to shine again. Like there are parts of the world where you can genuinely generate this kind of stuff. Like, and the technology currently is not there. I can see your face, but you know what technology wasn't there when they started with, internal combustion engines? A freaking petrol station every block. Like, it takes investment, Like, the fact is, when we're talking about electric cars, if you're running electric cars off of coal-powered power plants, like, that's not a win.
No.
You're just pretending it's not there. You're pretending that meat grows in plastic. It's the same thing.
I am not for fracking. My parents are I'm from West Sussex, where my parents live. Hey,
I'm from West Sussex too.
The point is, where I'm from, my parents have, every 4-5 months or so, I'll get a message from my parents saying, I was woken up by an earthquake today in, West Sussex, which is...
Ben just shrugged. I'm just going to say Ben shrugged.
This is not, supposed to happen. And, I understand, obviously, we cannot switch to renewable energy overnight. Obviously, that is not possible. And, the people who are saying let's use fracking as a bridge to this is, fine. But my problem is with it staying that way, because we have a big old issue of leaving resources in the ground when we could, if we wanted to, we could get them out. And it could be fine to an extent. Obviously, not to the extent where people can set fire to their water. That's not a great place to get to. But, if you are careful and if you are genuinely using it as a bridge technology and you are genuinely taking money away from investing in big oil, big gas companies and investing that money into solar, genuinely putting the effort to change the electricity grid to be able to be powered by renewable energy, building more electric car ports and stuff like that. If that is a genuine thing that starts to happen, I would be, I think, to an extent, okay with fracking if I genuinely believed that it would be used as a bridge technology. But I can't see it being used that way.
I'll be honest.
I may supporting fracking.
I may also have got there actually as well. That was me high fiving Drabs. He can be Drabs again.
Just to be clear, Beer Christianity has endorsed the fracking industry,
and we expect those big petrodollars to roll in. I don't understand the hatred of fracking over any other mineral extracting form of energy collection. I don't get that.
I mean, it's because white people in England have begun to realise the effects of
exactly.
this.
Bingo, and I don't see it as that much different. It is quite a bit different, but I don't see it as...
This is going to be abjectly ridiculous. Yeah?
As
if you're going to say a wind turbine.
Biggest freaking opponents of wind turbines are the
RSPB. Look, nobody likes those guys. They're a tiny charity with no supporters. Are they the biggest environmental charity in Britain?
Almost
probably,
certainly.
yeah.
Are they the biggest charity in Britain?
No.
Okay, wait, is that cancer research?
Yes.
Yeah, they're making great strides. Well done, guys. You've really... Hey, listen.
Involved in shitting on cancer research.
I'm just saying.
Where this
Having
is
another
gone.
beer, but is there?
Oh, shit.
We're out of beer.
Have a
Oh,
gin.
yeah. No, I'm getting sick. I'm gonna have a gin.
This is why we don't do Beer Christianity in a freaking studio.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's that disgusting clean sound, and
Yeah.
Absence
It's
of
awful.
beer.
Okay, that is a solid argument, admittedly.
Tell our faithful listeners what you are drinking right now.
Oh, I'm drinking a gin and tonic.
Oh
in
yeah,
a
did you
can.
make that yourself?
I
Did you get that poured? Has it got ice and lemon?
So ashamed. It's in a can. It's a can of pre-mixed gin and tonic, and I'm so ashamed. I'm more ashamed of this than of saying, yeah, maybe cracking's actually right. Well, that was Picket Chabwadzeka as well as me.
And me from the past.
From the past, weird. Ooh, spooky.
I also haven't listened to the last issue of the podcast. Edition?
Episode. Kind of like when you get really upset. It's an episode.
Episode, yeah.
Yeah.
I bet I say some really smart things though.
I bet you do. I know you burp on the previous episode of this, on part 1 of Environmental. Oh, sad face Laura is sad.
Okay, disclaimer, one of the burps, I assume, I haven't listened to the thing, one of the burps you hear is mine. The 2 other burps are the horrible men in the room who burped and blamed it on me, which is sad.
So sad. And
So
just
I'm
another
22.
example of patriarchy and the oppression of the
ageism.
young. Yeah, no, it's really sad.
Really, in conclusion, we should all be listening to Greta Thunberg.
We should be listening to Greta Thunberg. She's so freaking inspiring. Go out there and spread the word, guys. And that's
Go to climate protests if your boss lets you.
Go to climate protests if your boss lets you. And also get involved in other protests and forms of civil disobedience or even civil obedience but demonstration. Start obedient and work your way up. It's really very cool. Get involved in your local anti-austerity march or pro-Palestinian march or any other number of really good things, as well as the climate ones.
Anti-Trump marches, those are fun.
Anti-Trump marches, all that sort of stuff. These are legitimate ways in which, and if you're a Christian, be visibly Christian at those things, because I think a lot of the people who go to these marches don't realize that there's a lot of Christians there, or especially if you're an evangelical, and I still count myself probably as an evangelical, allowing people to know that you're a Christian, you're one of those evangelical guys or girls who is, totes born again the whole trip, and you still think that these things are important. It's really important to our witness in those areas, I think. And actually, somebody who talks a little bit about this in our witness to the rest of the world and our witness as a believing church is a guy called Elijah Braun, who is the head of the Baptist World Alliance, and he'll be coming up in a future episode because I got to interview him the other day and was kindly allowed to use the stuff by a magazine called Mission Catalyst, who are very cool, and so they've let me use they have let me use the audio for this. They do not endorse this podcast. Neither does Justin Welby, whose people have not got back to us yet about whether we can use his interview, but they are very busy, and it turns out they have more important things to think about than our podcast.
Boo. We should have all the time for Beer Christianity. It's great.
Beer Christianity is amazing. So you've got that coming up in a future episode. You've also got the founder of Theology and Literature and Theology Journal, talking about Graham Greene and Priests Without Collars. And you've got Peter Laws, the legendary Peter Laws, kind of horror aficionado, fan of Halloween, and Baptist pastor. They're not all Baptists. I don't go to a Baptist church, actually. I go to a Hillsong church. And weirdly, as I record this, people from my church are going to a meeting at a bar called Tap Social in Oxford, which is a social enterprise, which we'll tell you about one day when we record there, because it's kind of cool.
Yeah. We should. We've got some great ideas for future podcasts, such as beer and hymns.
Yeah,
it's something we want to do, and reviews of Christian meme pages. So these could be bonus episodes. They could be normal episodes. If you wanted to hear something like that, why don't you just drop us an email at beerchristianity@yahoo.com?
Yes. Nice.
Yeah? Or follow us on Twitter. I say us. I'm not I'm not a member here.
You are.
Am I?
Yeah.
Guest host.
You are one of the founder hosts, I think, at this point.
Cool,
right?
I'll take that.
Yeah.
On my Twitter bio immediately. I'm going to put that on there. Founder host of Beer Christianity Podcast.
You really should, actually. So you can follow me at Jonty Langley on Twitter. Beer Christianity on Twitter is Beer Exianity. It's probably the place you'll get the most up-to-date kind of sharing of links and all that kind of stuff. Beer Exianity on Twitter. And Laura, your Twitter handle is?
At Laura Durrant 27 is me on Twitter.
At Laura Durrant 27. I'm at Jonty Langley, JONTYLANGLEY. just my surname. And I don't know what Drabs is, but we can tell you next time. But
he doesn't have Twitter.
The important thing is to check us out on Twitter. You can also email us, but Twitter's going to be faster if you want to get in touch with us. And remember that all the podcasts are available on Apple Music and Apple Podcasts, but are quite hard to find if you're just Googling them. You can find them on there. Beer Christianity you need to look for. We're also on
Spotify, which is, my go-to podcast listening to app. It's what I listen to Beer Christianity on, in fact.
Me too, actually. And I think we look cooler on there as well.
We look more profesh.
Yeah. And if you want to find all the episodes on our basic kind of page, it is beerchristianity.libsyn.com, LIBSYN. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks so much for listening. You've been listening to Beer Christianity. We'll be back with another one really, really soon. Please tell your friends. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please review us and give us 5 stars. Apparently that's a thing you have to ask for. We're like Uber drivers now.
Follow us on Spotify. That is something you can do. You don't subscribe to us live on Spotify.
No, you just follow. Yeah. So follow us on Spotify, as well as sharing the episodes with your friends and telling people about it, and just generally getting involved.
Woo.
Also, if you have anybody who you think we should talk to, tell us.
Yes.
Okay, that's it. We say goodbye now.
Bye.